Hi, I'm Nikolai. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about your writing environment. You see, whenever you decide that you want to be a writer, when you want to be a professional author, and you want to move forward with writing a book, the first thing that you really need to do is give yourself some space to write. And that's not just physical space, as we're going to talk about today. Your writing environment is a space that is designed to be productive. Now, for some people, they don't need a lot of exterior help to make this happen. They're naturally productive, and they're able to write in coffee shops, on their bed, with just pen and paper. But most of us mere mortals do require a little bit more help. There aren't a lot of hard and fast rules about your writing environment because it's your writing environment, which means that it's personalized to each individual person. However, there are a few things that are in common between everyone. First of all, your writing environment has to be comfortable. It needs to be somewhere that is yours, somewhere that's kind of private in some way. It can be really anywhere. It can be on your bed, at your desk, on a side table. It really doesn't matter. You can write in a closet, but what matters is that you yourself are actually comfortable in that environment and that you don't have to meld it and shift all the time, because the more time that you spend making yourself comfortable in one place, the less time you're spending writing. And if you keep getting interrupted from your flow of writing in order to shift and get more comfortable, that's gonna be problematic, and your writing is gonna show that kind of choppiness to it. So rule number one, it has to be a comfortable environment for you. The second sort of rule, you might say, is that it needs to be inspirational, which is entirely subjective. What's inspirational for me may not be inspirational for you. Some people like to write in big studies surrounded by books, and that's inspirational for them. Others find that distracting. Whatever is inspirational for you, try to put it in your workspace. If that's inspirational quotes from other authors or a really cool picture, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just put it in your workspace so that you can look at it whenever you're feeling stuck, and it can help you move past that. One of the ways that you can make yourself more productive in your writing environment is by surrounding yourself with things that are productive. For example, I have a dining room table for a writing desk. This is because I like to spread out whenever I write. I like to surround myself by different colored pens and sticky notes and washi tape and things like this, because whenever I see those things, I want to use them, and therefore I want to do something, and that keeps me from just vegetating in front of my screen watching YouTube or other such things. There are a lot of different kinds of ways to write a book. You can write a book completely by hand, which I've done, and I don't recommend. 0 out of 10. You can also write a book completely online, but no matter what you're doing, you're probably going to have some sort of physical items to take quick notes or whatnot. This is where the term writing desk comes from. For some people, a writing desk is just a filing cabinet they toss all their pens into and go digging through when their pen dies. For other people, a writing desk is a very organized, very specifically oriented place. What matters, again, is what works best for you and your method. Now, I'm sure, like all writers, at some point in time in your writing career, you have done the aesthetic thing. You've grabbed a pretty journal and you've started writing something into it, some kind of story or story ideas, or maybe little bits and pieces of a fan fiction or something. These journals are beautiful, they're lovely, and we all have 10 of them that have like the first 3 pages written in, and the rest of them are blank or entirely blank, and they're just sitting on a shelf. We all have that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of the writing lifestyle, right? But the reality is that these aren't very productive, and they're not very useful for writing works that require any kind of editing, because you can't do anything with the pages. They are in that order, and they're going to stay in that order, and there's nothing you can do about it. So it's not exactly the most useful way to write. Now, for some people, it works. The aesthetic journal thing is, perfect for them, and those people are amazing and divine and really cool. But most of us are not those people, even though we want to be those people. So even though you probably already have 10 aesthetic journals sitting somewhere tucked away and looking pretty on a shelf, you probably should not aim to write your entire book in one of those pretty aesthetic journals, because it's going to be a nightmare when you get to editing. What I recommend instead is that you use some sort of paper system that allows you to move around your pages and replace pages and insert pages and things like that. Personally, when I was at Office Depot one day, I discovered the Tool system, TUL. And the Tool system is a paper organization system that allows you to pull out pages and put in pages. And it's really, really great for editing, because if I have a page that I'm really happy with, but the next page I've like cropped out like half of it, I can just rip out that one page that I screwed up and I can take it out and replace it with a page that I've corrected, I've fixed. I do a lot of like floor plans, and one of the things I love about the Tool system is that it has lined pages, it has grid pages, it has blank pages, it has all kinds of pages, and the thing that is marvelous about it is that it comes with a hole puncher. So you can punch holes in anything, you print something out from the internet. I can poke holes in sticky notes, it doesn't matter, anything. I can put pictures into my notebooks and I don't have to have like pockets for it. And it also comes in multiple sizes, so it comes in a normal 8x11 size paper, but it also comes in the smaller sizes, which is really great for just quick notes, or when I'm brainstorming, or when I'm writing when I'm in bed, because I don't necessarily want a whole like thing in my lap, but just a little thing that I can just put on my knee and write some notes. It fits in my purse and my backpack or whatever. So it's really a really versatile system, and it does everything I could want it to do. One of the things that really is the opposite of inspirational for me is whenever I'm writing in anything. It doesn't matter if it's a bound journal, it doesn't matter if it's a tool notebook. And I have a bunch of blank paper at the end because I feel like I should be filling that paper and I haven't. So something that I've recently been using are the campus notebooks. They're from a company called Kokio. I bought them from jetpens.com, which is a godsend. It's a website that gives you stationery from Japan and abroad. So the tools that are available on JetPens are tools that are for people who are picky about their stationery goods, which I think all writers naturally are. They give, quality paper instead of that thin crap that rips whenever you use a pencil on it and try to erase it. The campus notebooks, the Kokio campus notebooks, are thin. They're not big notebooks, they're not, 200-page notebooks, they're only like 30 pages, 30 sheets of paper. So they're really great whenever I'm working on a project and I'm not sure how much notebook I really need. They're great for during school. So the campus notebooks are thin and they have this really great system on them where it's lined, but it has dots throughout it. It's dot lined, which means that you can draw grids if you need them. These notebooks have the dotted system built into them, so if I need to switch over to a grid, I can make my own grid on the paper and not, have to waste that more expensive grid paper. Also from JetPens that I bought are friction pens. Friction pens are a kind of gel pen that are heat sensitive, which is something to be aware of. Because they're heat sensitive, if you leave something in your car that has that writing, the writing will vanish. Which is also what's great about this system, because the rubber end of the pen, the eraser end of the pen is an eraser, and it creates enough friction to cause the ink to disappear, which is why they're called friction pens. Which means they're erasable pens. Who doesn't love erasable pens? Moving on from the physical things that can help with your productivity in your writing environment, let's talk about some digital things that can help out with your writing. For me, the number one thing that makes me a better writer when I'm using my desk is the fact that I have dual monitors, which I know it's a little expensive to get dual monitors, but oh my god, is it so much more useful. I can have my writing project or Word document up on one screen, and then I can have an internet window up on the other one looking for like reference photos or something like that. I find it so much more helpful to have that dual window situation going on than having to flip between windows on my screen. It's just, if I can just have everything open in front of me all at once, it's just so much more useful. Sadly, sometimes whether or not you're productive has nothing to do with you and has to do with environmental factors. For example, if you live with others, maybe they're interrupting you all the time, maybe you work a lot, that kind of thing. So whenever you do get a chance to write, it's important to make sure you don't get any unnecessary interruptions. One of the things that I do whenever I'm writing is I turn my phone on to do not disturb mode. Regardless of whether or not you have an Android or an Apple phone, your phone should have a mode that basically mutes all incoming phone calls, mutes all notifications, maybe even mutes your alarms, and just allows you to just not be interrupted by anything going on. Another little trick that I use is that I live with my family. I live with my 4-year-old nephew. And so, you know, regardless of whether or not someone's knocking on my door, there's always background information, there's always background noise that's going to distract me, so I write at night. I know a lot of authors who do this. Now, not everyone has the luxury of writing at night because some people have to get up early. I get that, I totally get that, but if you do have the ability to write at night, it can be incredibly liberating to have an entirely quiet house or apartment or whatever for just a few hours without interruption because everyone else is asleep, and you can just focus on your stuff, you can just focus on your writing. Now, when you're writing, one of the ways that you can make sure that you get in the zone and stay in the zone to write is by giving yourself some sort of sound in the background that's kind of doling out everything else, doling out the neighbor's barking dog, doling out, you know, your parents snoring or whatever, just blocking all that stuff out. A lot of people write to music. Not everyone can do that. Personally, I've never been able to write to music that has words. So I have a study playlist on Spotify, which is entirely music without words. It's soundtracks to films, soundtracks to animes, soundtracks to TV shows. It's, you know, random music that I found on Spotify or on YouTube or on whatever that do not have words. That way I can't get distracted by what someone else is saying and I can just focus on what I'm trying to say, but it does give that consistent mood. I listen to rain tracks. A lot of people do this in order to sleep. There are like 10-hour rain tracks on YouTube that is just rain. It's just rain. It's someone who probably recorded about 10 minutes worth of rain from their window and they just have it on repeat, on loop for 10 hours. You can also look on YouTube for basically anything called ambient sounds. Any time that you type in ambient sounds onto YouTube, you're gonna find like 100 tracks. You can find like Diagon Alley background sounds. You can find, you know, fireplace sounds. Now, it's also important to have a place to store your media. Of course, there's always the default storing it on your computer itself. But if you have a lot of files or a lot of photos or a lot of videos or something like that, it's useful to get some kind of cloud system. OneDrive, great, easy. I don't know if it's free. There's a free version of it, I know. That's a great place to start. There's also Google Drive, which is useful. I would say OneDrive is probably a little bit better. Google Drive, I feel, is more designed for sharing your content. OneDrive is more for keeping your content, in my opinion. If you are typing out your story on Microsoft Word, what I like to do is to create aesthetic Word documents. I've actually already made an entire video on how to do this, so please check that out. In that video, I referenced something called 1001 Free Fonts, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a website that has over 1,000 free fonts. Now, free is asterisk free because it is free, but it's only free if you don't plan on using the font for commercial reasons. So it has to be like, you can't make money off of it. So yes, it is free. It's free to download. You can do it really easily, but not if you're going to use it for like work or something like that. So just be aware of that. Now, what I always highly recommend that young authors do, even experienced authors do, is that you keep all of your work together in a sort of encyclopedia. Now, I am not the one who came up with this. We have been doing this for hundreds, if not thousands of years, creating encyclopedia of stories and content about those stories and things like that. Everything from mythology books to, you know, the Tolkien series. If you don't know this, Tolkien, especially his son Christopher, compiled all of the information about the Lord of the Rings into these compendiums, which include things like the Silmarillion, the Unfinished Tales. My favorite is the Bestiary, because the Bestiary has all of the epilogue stories of what happens to everyone after the Lord of the Rings is done. It also includes a lot of information about all of the creatures and the mythology of the Middle Earth and everything like that. You know, the story of the gods and the story of everything that Tolkien spent 10 years compiling about his world. It's all encased in the Bestiary in the history of Middle Earth. More recently, J.K. Rowling did this when she compiled some of the background information going on in her books into some of the supplementary books, such as the Hogwarts Library set, and also her sort of big Encyclopedia project, which is called Pottermore. Now, Pottermore is a little bit different because it's an interactive reading website. It's not necessarily just like an encyclopedia website. You can find fan-made encyclopedias for just about any project, any television show, book series, anything. If you just type into Google the name of the project and then Wikia, W-I-K-I-A, and there are all kinds of fan-made wikis for these projects, but they're not 100% reliable because they are updated by fans. So how do you create this encyclopedia? How do you create an encyclopedia for your own work? Well, what I recommend is that you should start with any Word document and just start compiling information. If you're doing any research for your work, for example, if you're writing historical fiction or science fiction and you're doing like research into this stuff, like how the human reproductive system works, then I recommend that you include the links, the URLs of the pages that you're looking at, because you may find that like there was a piece of information you didn't write down that you need later on. At least you know where to find those, or create bookmarks at the very least, so you know where to find all of those resources again. You can also, if you're writing a fantasy piece, particularly a fantasy piece in which you're creating your own world, there is actually a paid-for resource that you can use. It's not that expensive. It's like $4 a month. It's pretty cheap. It's called World Anvil. I have a World Anvil account myself, but I don't really like the way they do timelines, so I don't tend to use it. But I'm super picky, and you're probably not going to be that picky. So check out World Anvil if that is the kind of project that you're working on. It includes things like you can make timelines on there, you can make maps on there that have like pinpoints and stuff. You can make entire like Wikia type pages, article pages, that kind of thing on there. You can make family trees. I mean, it's extensive. It's a really extensive system. But it really is designed for fantasy works that are in other worlds and stuff. Like, there are templates for how to make a page about how magic works in your world and things like that. I hate to sound super cocky here and toot my own horn, but another resource that you can use is actually my blog. It's called Le Vieux, and it includes pages about the pre-writing process right now. That's what I'm really focused on. And there actually is a page about this specifically, about creating your fantasy encyclopedia, as well as like tips for building your writing environment. So yeah, you could go check that out, maybe, you know, if you wanted to. So there's an idea. Finally, what I want to talk about right here at the end is kind of what to do to get started. If you've made the decision you want to write a book, but you haven't really made the decision beyond there. So what do you do whenever you decide you want to write a book? I've said this before about like what you need to get started in writing in a different video, but basically you need 4 things. First of all, you need the tenacity to write a book, but more importantly you need 3 things, and that's the plot, the setting, and the characters. Those are the 3 pillars of any story, of any narrative, of any novel. So if you want to be an author, you need to have those 3 things. Now, a lot of authors, of young writers, actually think that in order to write a book, they need to have this complicated system already figured out. No, you don't. You really only need to have those 3 things figured out. You need to know what kind of story you're going to tell. You need to know a very vague idea of where you want the story to be set. And you need to have some conception of your characters. Just grab 3 sticky notes and write your plot, your setting, and your character on it. That's all you need to begin. From there, a huge portion of your writing process, a huge portion of what you're going to be doing for the next, probably realistically, year, is filling those things out and coming up with a more detailed idea of a plot, a more detailed idea of a setting, and a more detailed idea of your characters, which is why writing encyclopedia is so very useful. Your writing encyclopedia will be unique, and it will be built however you need it to be built. If you don't really need to write down your ideas about your character because they're really clear in your head, then don't bother. But a writing encyclopedia is really useful for collecting all of the information for your story in one place, so that if you do make radical changes to the story, you can go back and look at things. Particularly, it's useful in the editing process. The reason why is because whenever you're editing, one of the big projects, one of the big steps in editing is fixing your pacing. In order to fix your pacing, you're going to have to go in and take out scenes and move scenes and take out huge chunks of information. A lot of young writers will overexpose their story, which means you have a ton of exposition in your story, which doesn't necessarily need to be there, or more commonly needs to be presented in a more active way rather than just being exposition dumps where a character's like, here's my entire life story. So very, very often what you're going to be doing in the editing process is taking out information and putting it somewhere else. A fiction encyclopedia allows you to keep track of all of those changes. What I do in mine is I actually highlight things that show up in the story so I can keep track of what has actually appeared in the story and what hasn't. So whenever I come up with a character's entire life story before I start writing the book, I know what I have revealed and what I haven't, and I can strategically plan out when I'm going to reveal certain information by scene. Like, rather than having an exposition dump where, there's an interrogation scene or something and a character just lays out all of their information, I can have that information being revealed sporadically throughout the story, which is more interesting to the reader rather than just having exposition bio dumps. Alright, I think I've rambled on long enough, so just a few more little hints. As writers, we tend to be a little obsessive. Whenever we write, we tend to just go on forever, so please take care of yourself, drink water, eat, get some sleep, and just be generally aware of your mental health. I hope that this was helpful. If you like the content of this channel, please consider liking. There's a subscribe button, if you want it. I do videos every other week. Originally I was going to do every week, but that was too much with grad school, so it's every other week. So I'll see you in a fortnight. Bye!